I was born in Weston, Ontario on January 27th, 1962, which makes me 57 years old. I lived in Toronto till about the age of 10. My parents started building a cottage just north of Orillia, and not having a lot of money but wanting to live in cottage country, we ended up moving up into the cottage. Like a shoemaker that never has shoes, I ended up living in an unfinished cottage for most of my teen life. After high school, I went to McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario to study languages. I absolutely loved French, but I wasn't able to grasp it very well. I wasn't very good at it. So my professor recommended that I move to France and become an au pair, which I did. After my second year of university, I ended up applying for a job in France. I got it, and I ended up moving in with a family of three young girls, Gail, Kiki, and Estelle. And there they are when I looked after them, and there they are just a few years ago. We have remained good friends. In fact, I was with some of them in Cuba in December. When I got back from France, I decided to not continue with my French studies simply because generally, if you're going to be studying languages, or particularly one language like French, it's because you want to be either an interpreter or a teacher. And I wasn't good enough to be an interpreter, and I decided I didn't want to be a teacher because I didn't want to work with children all day. So my mom said to me, "I think you should be a plumber." And I said to her, "I can't, Mom. I wear rubber gloves for doing dishes. There's no way I'm going to put my hand in a toilet." So being a plumber was out of the question. And so she said, "Well, then I think you should get into computers because I think they're going to be big." This was back in 1986. I took her advice. I enrolled in college, a 3-year program, and graduated as a computer programmer analyst. Upon graduation, I started my own training company, which I'll get into later. But in my early days of teaching, I met Dan, my husband, Dan Herbert. He walked into my classroom to take an Excel course one day, and that was it for me. There's no problem with the teacher-student relationship because he's 9 years older than I am. We lived in Orillia for a short time, and then we moved to Washego, a small village on the Green River just north of Orillia. We got married on my 45th birthday and in our living room. And the reason why our wedding party is wearing their pajamas and long johns is because, as far as they knew, we were just having them over for my birthday dinner. And they decided to pull a prank on us and show up in their pajamas. Well, it was pretty funny because one of the girls, when they knocked on the door and I opened it and I'm wearing a gown and Dan's wearing a tuxedo, they started laughing and they said, "Ha ha, we're in our pajamas," because they thought we were pulling a trick on them by getting so dressed up. And I leaned into them and I said, "Ha ha, we're getting married." And the girls were they were mortified because they wanted to run home and get changed, and I wouldn't let them. I said, "Get in here, we're getting married." And once the minister performed his duties and left, Dan and I changed into our pajamas and I cooked dinner for everyone. We had a great life in Washego. We were known for having a lot of parties, especially our hat and wig parties. You couldn't get in the door unless you were wearing a hat, a wig, or both. In fact, we had so many of these parties that my sister, who's a real estate agent, was driving some people around Washego one day to look at houses, and they drove past my house. My sister didn't tell them it was mine. And as they went by the house, the woman pointed to it and said to my sister, "You know, they're swingers." And my sister had a hard time keeping a straight face when she asked them to clarify, and apparently that's what the neighbors thought because of all the parties that we had. So we got a good chuckle out of that. Dan introduced me to Woods Bay, and it's a place where he'd been coming for 30 years. renting a cottage there for 2 weeks every summer. Well, once I got a taste of it, 2 weeks wasn't enough. And so I kept adding a week on each summer. And we got up to the point where we were up to 12 weeks. And we passed this place called Dry Island. A small island with a house on it and a shop and a bunkie. And I just loved it. I fell in love with it. It had a screened porch that ran down the front of it, and it was for sale from time to time. We talked about it and decided that we wanted to live here. So one Monday, we had no plans. We were just literally planning on packing up from this rental cottage to go home for the fall, and the following Monday, we owned a small island. And we're extremely happy here. Our kids and our grandkids absolutely love it up here, and so we get to see them way more than we used to. And we have kind of turned into hermits ourselves, really not wanting to leave the island unless we absolutely have to. Dan owns a company called Credit Bureau Collections. He's the president, and our son is going to be taking over the company. So Dan is retired. I am still running my company. As long as I've got an internet connection, that works out fine. And we do have a great internet connection. During our first year, we had a builder come in and build me an office right next door to the house, which is terrific because my commute is only 12 steps. So now we live on Dry Island from April to December, and then in Cuba from December to March. Our area of choice is Trinidad, Cuba. We've been going to the same resort numerous times every winter. Last winter, we stayed there for the whole winter. Again, as long as I've got an internet connection, I can work. And we have lots of visitors, of course. These are our kids and their spouses and our grandkids, Audrey and Elroy. But this coming winter, we will be renting a house in a small fishing village just down the road from Trinidad. The village is called La Boca. We love to travel. We've been to 20-odd countries. Our next trip is going to be probably next spring or summer, and that will be to Iceland, Norway, Finland, Denmark, might be a little bit of Russia, northern Germany and France to visit some friends. Okay, so that's my personal story. Next, my professional life. As I said, I started CTC computer training and consulting upon graduation from college. That was in September of 1990. So this September, that means I'll be celebrating my 29th anniversary. We do corporate Microsoft Office training. One-day courses, that's our specialty. Various levels. And we have a classroom in Barrie, Ontario, and where we on our website, we publish a schedule of our one-day courses, and that's where companies can sign their employees up. Although most of our work is on site, we actually go to companies all over the country for our one-day courses. And as I mentioned, our specialty is making people much more efficient using Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, and Windows. In fact, I have an email tip list with over 800 people on it, and every few weeks I send out a tip with exactly that in mind, showing people that have been using these programs for years little tips and tricks that they've been missing out on. I no longer teach. I just manage the bookings for our company. I do the invoicing and I write the manuals. I've written over 70 software training manuals to date. I also am a writer. I published my first fiction novel called Breach in November of 2017. I'm currently in the middle of book number 2, and I have outlines for books 3, 4, and 5 on the go. I've also started volunteering to read audiobooks for LibriVox, as I'm looking forward to expanding my voice work portfolio. And that's my professional life. And now I'll wrap up with information about my Rotary life. Dan and I, and a group of 18 others, chartered the Rotary Club of Washego and Area Centennial on Rotary Centennial, February 23rd, 2005. It was a great little club, which sadly has folded in the past year. But We had a lot of really successful projects, and we did good things for the community, and we all feel very good about it. As with most small clubs, I held many positions in it, including president. At the district level, I started out as I was the chair of Polio Plus for 6 years. Anybody who purchased a End Polio Now car magnet, or has seen these, that was my project for about 4 years. And it had a good run. I also took a small group of interactors down from Aurelia down to Colima, Mexico to participate in a Project Amigo Dental Hygiene Work Week, which was a fantastic experience for both the students and myself. And I continue to sponsor a Project Amigo student. Dan and I have been involved with a number of youth initiatives. We have hosted an international exchange student, Anna Bramer from Germany. That was about 10 years ago, and since then we've been to Germany to visit her. She's been here a number of times to visit us. In fact, she's arriving next month for another visit. I am so enamored with the student exchange program that any time I meet a 15 or 16-year-old, I can't help but talk to them about it. We also have participated in international student weekends with the University of Toronto in conjunction with the Rotary Club of Aurelia. And that's where we tell the University of Toronto that we have spots for 30 to 40 students. They fill a school bus up, and we bring them up for a winter weekend. The idea being that international students arrive in Toronto, many of them not knowing anyone, so they have no way of getting around to explore. And they're basically stuck in Toronto for the winter, and they think that's winter in Canada, which, I mean, there's some winters that Toronto doesn't even get snow. So we bring up a busload of the students, we billet them with Rotarians, and we have a weekend absolutely packed with winter activities. Everything from snowshoeing, skiing, ice fishing, tubing, toffee pulls in the snow. We get together for a big dinner where all of the students get to tell us about their countries. Many of them take it upon themselves to entertain us with song and dance from their countries. We host them in our homes, and we get to know them. Many of these students we've had back for other visits. We absolutely love that weekend. In fact, if you were to ask me if there was a downside to living on this island, the only one I can honestly think of is that we're too far away to be involved in that weekend anymore. We also participated in a Rotary Friendship Exchange with District 3011 in Delhi, India. What a terrific experience that was. We were hosted by 3 or 4 different Rotary families. We got to see all the different Rotary projects they're involved in. We got an up-close look at polio and its effects on India and the work that they're doing to help those affected by it. We got to visit a hospital where a doctor does reconstructive surgeries for polio victims. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. I have attended 5 Rotary International conventions. I have been Assistant Governor for Area 4 of District 7010, and I am a Paul Harris +8 Fellow and a Rotary Benefactor. And what inspired me to become a Rotarian, I think attending the district conferences, but I think the Rotary International Convention in San Antonio, Texas was the biggie for me. I was so moved by the speakers and all that I saw Rotary doing. I literally felt like I was floating on a cloud when I left that convention, and I knew that I needed to be a part of that.